All right, so in this video, I'm just going to discuss some recent form stuff I've been messing with and show some clips throwing at the end. This isn't a tutorial video, just a discussion. So I'm calling this narrow to late widening reach back. It's a mouthful, I don't know how else to describe it. So the idea, the main focus in this session is, so when I say narrow reach back, I mean keeping this angle here at 90 degrees. I'm going to call that narrow. If it's wider than 90 degrees, then that's wide. And widening is, the transition of making it wider, obviously. So if I'm throwing directly away from the camera, if I lock this shoulder angle at 90 degrees, and I coil until my chest is facing the camera, which is at 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock is where I'm throwing, and now I extend my elbow. My arm is now aligned from 6 o'clock to throwing 12 o'clock. So that's that. Now, if I, with this 90-degree shoulder angle, if I coil extra, so for me, this amount of coiling would be like a high-powered throw, like 80%. But if I'm trying to throw like close to max power, 90, 95%, I'm gonna coil more. I did not move my arm from the shoulder here. It's still 90 degrees, but you can see it's now offline from the throwing line. And so when I coil extra, what I normally do is widen the reach back. But I'm widening the reach back. Like I start coiling like this without reaching back, without moving my arm, and then here I continue coiling and reach back, and it's widening. I'm trying to do that widening in sync with the remaining coiling that I'm doing, and trying to time that peak reach back, of course, to happen close to when my brace is landing. So that's what I normally do. The main difference is I'm now thinking about when I'm doing this full coil, where my chest starts facing, instead of 6 o'clock, more towards 7 o'clock, I'm thinking about initially reaching back on that narrow 90-degree shoulder angle, and then later, close to when my brace is landing, about to land or is landing, later widening it back to online. And it feels like there's a benefit to having that widening of the reach back, saving some of it to happen later, as opposed to my normal timing where I'm going straight to that widening and it's kind of like finishing, and then perhaps the muscles being used are, relaxing a little bit more because I'm finishing it earlier, rather than having it happen later, where when I have it happen later, it feels like my kind of theory for why this feels different and could be helping, like my power pocket, perhaps power and spin. I've only done field work right now with this. Mostly I haven't done much disc testing. My theory is that with the late widening is, as it's happening late and my brace is planting and I'm starting to throw, this widening motion is kind of transferring or trickling over into my pull through. And what is the widening? Widening the shoulder angle, right? That's what it is. It's called horizontal abduction. Abduct, like alien abduction, get taken away. The arm getting taken away from the body. And if you're in the power pocket position, horizontal abduction is that deepening of the pocket. So if you have this late horizontal abduction to widen the shoulder angle as your pull through is about to start, it feels like that can kind of carry over into your pull through and maybe help you get a deeper pocket, or not even necessarily get a deeper pocket, but just helping to keep the disc out in front of your chest, maintaining that space for the disc. I don't have a problem maintaining the space for the disc, typically not that much of a problem. and I don't have much of a problem with horizontal collapse, which is the opposite of horizontal abduction. But starting out a little bit, like getting wider earlier, does kind of, I think, set me up for coming in more towards the chest, because I feel I'm really wide earlier on, and kind of feel like I need to come in towards the chest more instead of, you know, more directly on that line. I'm like kind of wide of the line maybe a little bit. And I'm maybe not maintaining the space as much, whereas when I start narrow, which feels kind of counterproductive, it's like, oh, it feels like the disc is going to be more trapped behind me here, and that I'm going to, you know, it's going to be harder. But then it's like, oh, just getting this late widening onto the line there and having it carry into the pull through. So the main feeling I got was the like redirect felt a little bit different, felt a little bit more redirecty. I even had one throw where right after the throw I was like, ah, like my fingers were stinging pretty bad. I've still been getting used to, I've been trying more of a curled finger power grip lately, and my fingers are still getting used to it, like kind of extra curled like this. So the fingertips are kind of more, you know, going into the rim there, and so you kind of get that, you know, harder fingertip pressure that I'm not fully used to. But I don't often get that pronounced of a stinging feeling as I got in that particular throw, which you'll see later. The other thing with this that was interesting was I wasn't thinking as much of using my normal cues for keeping my elbow up, which the most effective cue for me is just more powerfully and actively internally rotating, instead of what a lot of people do is just try to stay internally rotated. Stay, please stay. It's not going to stay if you have a tendency to elbow dip. You have to, you know, use some strength to stop the elbow dip. And that's really effective. But I was focusing more on this, you know, reaching back style and timing, so I wasn't focusing as much on that. I noticed a little bit of elbow dip in some of the throws, and I started kind of thinking a little bit about it, but I was surprised at some of the throws how good my elbow height looked without having as much focus as I normally need to get that, since my focus was mostly elsewhere. Now, of course, how much of that can I attribute to this new form versus I've just been focusing on the internal rotation for a long time now, and so maybe the muscle memory is just happening better without as much focus on it? You know, of course you can't tell. If you put your arm in this position and then you push your elbow away from your chest, that's scapular protraction. When you do that, it naturally makes your shoulder not want to collapse horizontally across your chest like this, hugging yourself. I have a wall drill that is very good at helping you feel this. Start without scapular protraction, so kind of pull your elbow closer to your chest, put it on the wall, and just twist your body like this, and you'll feel how easy it is for the shoulder to, or the upper arm to collapse and touch your chest. Push the elbow out now, scapular protraction, and instead of trying to drive the elbow into the wall to stop the horizontal collapse, just keep pushing the elbow forward. And now start twisting and feel it's just like, I'm so relaxed here, and I can really kind of crank on this rotation, and this just doesn't want to collapse. When it's protracted, it just kind of locks it in there. Feeling that can be really helpful to feel how to not hug yourself when you reach back, I think. I normally lock in some of the scapular protraction in my setup position. And so now, thinking about trying to reach over here so I can do a full coil, deep coil, while keeping it 90-degree shoulder angle, narrow reach back to save the widening reach back for later, I kind of feel like I'm pushing my arm first instead of coiling first, because I'm trying to think about, coil deeply, and with a 90-degree shoulder angle, that means my arm's going off the throwing line initially. So with this protraction locked in and it not wanting to collapse, if I push my arm that way, something has to give. And if the shoulder's not going to give into horizontal collapse, then the torso and the hips, the pelvis, are going to start twisting. So it kind of feels like arm-driven twisting into the coiling. And you feel very quickly and immediately that tension that you feel in the wall drill through your upper back with that protraction. So that...
I don't normally think about coiling as arm-driven like this. Normally I do set in that protraction and kind of just hold the arm there and think about coiling, from the rear hip and twisting through the spine without moving my arm so that I don't reach back too soon. And then I start moving the arm and finishing the coiling later. But here I was kind of thinking about this because I was trying to stop myself from reaching back wide earlier. And so I was thinking more about moving the arm where I wanted it to go more narrow first. And so things started to become more arm focused with coiling.
I think was helping to feel the tension, the stretch and the reach back, and to keep that tension and stretch, the good tension and stretch in the reach back for longer, and then doing that widening at the last moment. Whereas I can still feel good tension and stretch in my reach back when I go wide sooner, but the tension is a little bit different. It's more just this scapular protraction stretching further away, and you don't feel it kind of against the twisting. Like here, I feel it against the twisting, and so I can keep that feeling of the tension against the twisting and then widen the shoulder angle at the end, and then the pull through is starting. And as the pull through is starting, you're doing that twisting like I showed on the wall, and that's then further keeping that tension where it's kind of feeling like it's pulling you towards horizontal collapse, but you're not collapsing because of this tension with the scapular protraction. And so I feel like it helped keep the tension very connected for longer from the reach back and coiling into the pull through, rather than there being like a break in the tension where some slack gets introduced and then you lose some power from that.
Interestingly, I've only broken 70 miles per hour twice, and it's been a while since the last one, but I do remember in that session, I was thinking about swinging my reach back out wider towards the end of it, kind of more dynamically and aggressively than I usually do. And I was thinking this is feeling really good and it's helping my power right now. Stop worrying about trying to be super controlled with the reach back. Just, lean into this good feeling. However, in that session, I was doing my usual, widening earlier. And so maybe I'm getting some of these same feelings here with this, starting more narrow and saving the widening for the end so I can kind of lock into that feeling more often. And to clarify, the elbow extending can feel like the reach back is widening because it's moving the disc away from you, but I'm talking more about the shoulder widening when I talk about the reach back widening, because the shoulder is where your arm is connected into that coiling tension.
I had a recent short that I'll link in the description, which kind of gave me some of these feelings and made me want to toy around with it some more, but in a less dramatic way. It's called Stop Hugging Yourself, where I start out hugging myself like this, and I start in a coil pause position and then show that if you just go out wide and then pull through, the hugging yourself is not even a problem. You can still throw powerfully like that. And that can help you feel, what does it feel like to actually reach away from your body instead of hugging yourself, by starting in that position and then feeling how much away feeling the reach back is. And so that, having all of that away, late widening right before I'm about to pull through, was giving me some of these feelings. And so that kind of tied into thinking about it in this way, connecting all these pieces together like this. So somebody, a pro who I think does this really well, not exactly maybe, but Zach Nash, I'll put an example. So he's kind of starts with his arm extended out like this a little bit, and then as he starts to coil, you see it comes in kind of close, that elbow bent while you're coiling, and then it's reaching out wide as he's deeply coiling. And you can sometimes see in slow motion as his brace is planting, the disc is still moving wider in the reach back, keeping that tension and preloading that horizontal abduction to kind of go into the pull through. I've tried emulating Zach Nash's form before and didn't feel this as clearly at that time because I was thinking more along the lines of my normal widening reach back timing, where I'm widening kind of earlier instead of kind of starting this stretch in the shoulder and upper back feel towards that narrow direction, and then having more of that widening left over to do while maintaining the tension.
As you can see here, I'm thinking about really exaggerating the late widening reach back, but I didn't end up doing that much, but I think the intention still carried into my pull through and benefited it.